Hello everyone, Dave Landry here from DaveLandry.com. This is Trading Simplified. So what are we talking about? Well, somebody asked me if I would cover my schedule from sun up to sundown or eyes awake to eyes closed. I forget which one. For the methodology in action, we have a setup, which is surprising because we haven't had it in a while. And it actually triggered, so I'll show you that in just 1 second. That was supposed to be this week's mystery chart. Housekeeping, like I said a second ago, I do take requests. It makes my job a lot easier. You can send them to davelandry.com/contact. If I can't fit it into this slot, I can cover it in Dave Landry's The Weekend Charts. To register for that, davelandry.com/webinar. If you want the slides from this presentation and all the other presentations combined, my books in PDF format, limited access to the members area, a market timing course, and a bunch of other stuff to keep you busy for a while, for free, go to davelandry.com/StockCharts. Twitter, you can reach me at tfollowingmoron, and YouTube at Dave Landry. All right, let's talk about the mystery charts and the methodology in action. Now, this was supposed to be a mystery chart for today, but it's not a mystery chart because it triggered just a few minutes ago. We had a really nice thrust here. Longer term, this stock was in a trend. It consolidated by going sideways for quite a while. And then it really began to take off. Nice little pullback. It could be a little deeper for my taste, but I figure it was worth a shot, even though it's a fairly deep pullback. This is a very volatile stock. Here are the parameters. Entry 837, protective stop 637, and an IPT of 1037. So it'll be just off the chart up here. Now, let me show you how I ended up playing this one. We had a gap, and then we had a fast move on the open. Now, if the gap would have been below the entry and the stock came right back in, it'd be a no-brainer because it didn't trigger. But in this case, it triggered on a fast move, and notice that it immediately reversed. Now, in a case like this, what I like to do is take a second entry, usually above the day's high. In this particular case, because this was a stock on the trading service, and I did want to actually mimic my service as much as possible to make sure I'm in the stock too. So I put in an entry a little bit below the high for the day. My thinking was if it did trigger, maybe the stock would keep on going as opposed to waiting for a little bit higher trigger. Might get some slippage up there. Everybody and their brothers could be looking to get in at that level. And again, I wanted to be in because my peeps on the trading service are also in the stock. Anyway, there's my trade down there. All right, let's shift gears. And the question is, what's your daily schedule, sun up to sundown? And they might have said eyes open to eyes closed because sun up to sundown is sometimes it's a little bit longer than that. But anyway, sometimes the sun's not up. Okay, 4:54, I wake up, and my alarm's set for 4:54, but the clock is usually about 10 minutes fast. So it's probably about 4:44 or so. And I'm not one of those persons that can fast in the morning. I need a little sugar for brain power. So a little bit too many details here, but I just eat like a little bit of a light breakfast, something to give me a little brain power. Some protein powder and heavy cream and coffee. I'm not a huge fan of processed foods. Well, I enjoy processed foods, but I try to avoid as much processed stuff as possible. But it's convenient, so I do that. I take or eat 4 Brazil nuts, and that gives me a little selenium, which keeps me strong like bull. Google it. With a 1/4 teaspoon of coconut oil. I know, a little bit too much TMI, but that's what I wake up, first thing I do to get a little blood sugar going so my brain will work. And your brain uses like 20%, I think, of your body's energy, and based on the size of the organ, it's a tremendous amount of your body's energy. I work to stay analog. I have a digital tablet, but everything there is analog. It's connected to the internet, but that's more for backing up what I do as opposed to surfing the net or something like that. I do try to stay analog as much as possible. Sometimes I'm pretty curious and I have to see what happened overnight in the markets, especially if I have a lot of crypto positions on, or if I had maybe a leftover futures position or something along those lines. But as much as possible, I try to stay analog doing my morning pages. I write 3 handwritten pages, and in part of staying analog, I try not to preload my pages with anything. Like, I'm not looking at older writings. I'm not coming in and checking my screens, ideally. I'm just starting to write what's in my head, kind of like to warm up my brain. And by the way, as I've said 1,000 times before, this will change your life if you wake up every day, and I take weekends off, FYI, But if you wake up every day and you write 3 handwritten pages, you're going to be amazed at what's going to come out over time. Now, once I'm done with my morning pages, or if I think of things as I'm working on the morning pages, I'll put together my to-do list, maybe some goals or things that I want to accomplish. Around 6 o'clock, I shift gears from the morning pages to more random thoughts on trading. And I'm still analog here, but I might look at some writing that I did in days past. If I wrote a really good piece during my morning pages, sometimes the first page of morning pages, kind of brain warm up, just random things, what's going on in my life, where are my frustrations, where am I doing well, etc. And then about second page in or so, a lot of times the content writing will just start flowing at that point once my brain's a little warmed up. So if I capture something good that morning, I'll move it over to a project I'm working on. It's a book I'm working on, and I'll work on it there a little bit. But now it's a little bit more focused, and I'm no longer doing just the random thoughts on life and in general. This is more on trading. Now, I still remain analog during this time period. Around 7:10 or so, I'll come into the office, I'll check futures, I'll check any after-hour trading, and depending on what's going on in crypto, I'll take a look at crypto. At 7:15, I'll record the market in a minute. 7:30, I'll hit the gym. I try to be out of the office at least by 7:30. Any later, and it makes it difficult to get back in time. I don't kill myself at the gym, but I do work out fairly hard, and it should only take me about 30 minutes if I don't chit-chat too much and rest between sets. I think I do 18 sets total at the gym, 6 exercises, 3 sets each. So about 8:15 or so, I'm back at my house. I check futures, I check in on my Facebook group. I look at my core trading spreadsheet. That's for my core methodology. Each day I put out a trading service. So I look at that spreadsheet to see where my entries are for any potential setups, if any. And then I also look at my Landry list to see if there's any ancillary stocks that I might want to trade on that. And I'll explain the Landry list in just one second here. 8:25, I check for opening gap reversals, or opening gaps, I should say, for stocks that could possibly gap down and reverse. Opening gap is when, ideally, if you have a stock that's sort set up and then gaps down within that setup, and then the thinking is that it flushes people out. Institutions might come in and buy if it's a little bit thicker stock, which it should be for opening gap reversals. And by looking at the pre-open gaps, I can decide whether or not I want to tackle any opening gap reversals in the market. And I've talked about opening gaps before. If you go to my YouTube channel, which is at Dave Landry, once you're on YouTube, you can find quite a bit on the opening gap reversals. And in general, I prepare for the open. A lot of prepare for the open is things I'm actually doing on the open too. So I want to make sure my Landry list, and that's my list that I cull down to, my watch list for the day, is in an actual watch list on my trading station. I look for triggers and setups. Maybe I'll set some alerts, alarms. In some cases, I'll actually set hard orders. I check the ranges in the main ETFs, and I'm looking at today's range, high to low, to see how big of a move the market has made. Because if you're looking at an intraday chart, it's going to look like this big old huge move, and then FOMO is really going to kick in. In reality, it might just be a small inside day on a daily chart. So also look at the daily charts too when I'm doing that. A lot of these things I'm talking about, I have covered in a lot of details on my YouTube channel and my website. So I'm going to kind of gloss over those, and as time allows, I'll start going back and revisiting them. For instance, we're going to talk about IPOs in a few minutes. If you go in and watch, I did quite a few presentations on IPOs for both Trading Simplified, for StockCharts, and then also in my weekend charts shows. Anyway, a lot of this stuff is done pre-market, but the market opens at 8:30. I'm on Central Time, by the way. And so I'm looking for triggers. I'm setting alerts. I'm looking again at the ranges in the main ETFs to see if anything's moving. I'm watching the RS screen with selective ETFs. For RS, I'm just looking at those who have made the biggest net change. So let's say if SoxL is high on the list, and maybe followed by LabU and JNUG, I might want to take a look at those ETFs to see if there's something there. I also want to check, again, the range to make sure it's not just a little bit of a blip on the intraday charts. And then take a look at crypto, specifically BITO and GBTC, and then BITI sometimes, obviously. Cash crypto, I'll take a look at those, see what's moving. And then as far as the market is concerned, I'm really paying attention to fake outs and fake outs of fake outs, and opening gap reversals to see if there's any. And then again, I'm noticing the percent ranges on these markets that I'm looking at. So the fake outs of the fake outs thing is the market will do what it has to do to fake out the most people. So what I'm looking at there is, let's say it just kind of opens up and takes off and then begins to sell off hard. So that's like one fake out, and then maybe it begins to rally off the low. So that might be the second fake out. So maybe that second breakout might be worth playing. And if it can't get back to break out again, maybe I just want to sit on my hands. Okay, 8:45. I'm continuing to watch the open. I start looking at my change from open scan, and this is something that I've done before, and I've gotten into a lot of trouble doing it. So I have to be really, 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 really careful. It's kind of one of those you can't kiss all the women type of situations, but I do like to see what's moving. And I just have a simple scan where I'm looking at least 1 million on average volume, and I want to see a 10% or more move from the open. So I like to see what's really moving. Like today, there's some crypto stocks on this list. Riot's on the list. SDIG is on the list. Then there's some cheap crypto penny stocks. Not that I want to chase all these stocks, but I do like to see what's moving and where. Now, there's a huge danger in doing that because, again, your FOMO could really kick in by watching all this stuff. And by the way, I'm going to show you a lot of stuff that I do today. If you were following the core methodology, and core methodology, let's say plus IPOs, there's not nearly as much of these things to do. I'm just here all day working on projects. So this is what my trading day looks like. Now, I have a Facebook group, Dave Landry's Trend Traders. You have to be at least a gold member or a service member of my website to participate, and that keeps the riffraff out. I'm kind of half kidding, but it seems like anytime I've been part of a forum, it turns into Lord of the Flies really quick. And I was actually in some professional traders forums, and it got pretty ugly pretty quick between these professionals. Anyway, long story endless, I love the Facebook group, probably the best thing I've ever done. But again, you have to be a member of my website, a paid member, I should say, to participate. And answer any questions that are there and post observations. And also, I like to see what my trader brethren are doing there. We've got a really good group of traders, and a lot of times I'll pick up some good ideas there. I will post any observations I might have. I'll take a look at the VIX, for instance, to see if it's stretched, if there's any signals, such as like the TFM 10% system and things like that. And then usually a little bit earlier than 8:45, because by then it might be too late, but I will post potential ogres at some point if there's something I really, really like. Now, those opening gap reversals, by the way, they don't come along every day. Okay, 9:30. My goal then is to work to get off screen. If I'm not careful, I'll stare at a screen all day long. And that's a new thing that I do, just simply because I'm working on this show, I'm working on Weekend Charts, I'm working on projects for China or whoever, or some other international work. There's just a lot going on, seems like all the time. Plus, I'm still running an educational business while I'm doing all this too. So to get off screen, instead of watching a stupid screen, I'll set alarms outside of the ranges for futures, ETFs, and potential intraday setups. For instance, I literally, as I'm recording this, I hit pause and I went and set an alarm on the S&P futures. I also check the crypto if we're in a really hot RS market, meaning that everything seems to be going straight up. And then sometimes when you're in those crazy RS markets, you could just simply buy the strongest pairs and then manage them, use proper money management, take some profits, trail the stops, etc. And then anything less than a hot market of crypto, I'll look for setups, and most of my setups, nearly all of them, are pullback in nature, and so that's what I'm looking for the most part in crypto. I might occasionally look at something like a 230 EMA breakout, which is on my YouTube channel. So around 9:40, I'll try to get some breakfast, usually a little earlier than that, because I'm pretty hungry, especially after working out. And nothing special, just some leftovers. It's not like I go in the house and cook something up. Usually I'm in a hurry to get back to the office. So 15 minutes later or so, return to the office. One thing that I learned to do, as I've said before, is I write WITO, which stands for Walk in the Office, in my trading journal. And in the past, I found myself, especially like after breakfast and after lunch, all of a sudden, everything just looks beautiful, and I make a lot of stupid trades that I shouldn't be making. And it was interesting. I later read about a study done, I think it was Israeli judges, and I forget who did it. It might have been Kannerman. I always forget, but I'll give him credit when I find the research again. But the judges gave much lenient sentences after lunch than they did before lunch, and the theory is that they were a little hangry before lunch. And then I used to make all these crappy trades after walking in my office. I'm like, what does walking in the office have to do with making crappy trades? And the reality is, it is because I was hungry going out of the office, and then I was full coming back in. By the way, my office, it used to be a separate structure from my house. Now it's separate, but it's still attached. So, but I do have to leave the house to get here. So it's sort of like I'm going to work and then I'm going home after work. Usually around mid-mornings like this, I'll reanalyze any risk in open intraday trades to see what my actual risks are. Hopefully positions have moved in my favor a little bit. And also I need to pay attention to see if anything might be nearing an initial profit target on the intraday stuff. By the way, I'm going through a lot of stuff that I do. If you're just following the core methodology, a lot of times I'll just bore you to death with that, because a lot of times there's no setups, and sometimes the setups don't trigger, and basically you need to just check in a little bit, keep a loose eye on the market here and there, but for the most part, you could put on your trades or put in your orders and then go about your life. Try to be as hands-off as possible, especially with that position stuff. So anyway, once again, I'm taking a look at the open risk for anything intraday and making any adjustments if necessary. Now, at this point in time, I'm trying to get off the screens as much as possible. I do kind of keep a casual eye on things. I'm looking over right now as I'm doing this presentation at my change from open screen. I'm occasionally glancing over to my other screen to see what's happening. But for the most part, I'm trying to focus mostly on some sort of content. And that could be something for this show that you're watching now, or for my weekend charts. I'll take care of any business fires for my educational business, maybe check some emails, interact with my Facebook group. And then again, I'll keep a loose eye on my computer screens and keep an eye on that change from open. But I need to be really careful not to just jump in just because these stocks are going higher. Now, if conditions greatly improve, we get into a rip-roaring bear market, something like that CFO scan would really come in handy. So somewhere between 1 and 2 something, I try to grab some lunch, just some leftovers. Around 1:49, I return to the office. And at this point, once again, I write WITO for walk of the office in my journal. And then keep an eye on the intraday risk. I also check to see if anything may be getting close to, again, the initial profit target. I try not to micromanage the intraday stuff, and I try to do as little as possible. And I do get kind of sucked into having, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, half a dozen screens up all day. But I do have to be careful with that. But if there's something that's nearing the initial profit target, or something that's just not acting properly, I might look to exit. Now, keep in mind, again, with the core methodology, there's not a lot to do. I'm not going to do a lot of micromanagement there. I might occasionally take an initial profit target if it gets close to the IPT, but for the most part, I try to leave those positions alone. Now, around 2:30, I start my IPO analysis. I run a little software trick to show me the latest stocks that were just added to the database. I also go to StockCharts.com, and it's a little scan that they added based on my recommendation, and I thank them for that. This has been out for a little while. And I look at their scan on IPOs to make sure I didn't miss something, along with some other sources. So I'm checking for new IPOs, and I'm going to add those IPOs to my watch list. Now, I'm going to sort my IPOs by one-day volume just to show me the more liquid ones, because we do have a lot of ones. There are a lot of ones that come public that aren't very liquid. At this point in time, I'm looking for potential buy at B type of setups, and that's for IPOs, and that's simply an IPO with quite a few caveats, but an IPO making a new closing high. And again, I have a lot of presentations on that if you check my YouTube channel. Now, I'll also consider getting in early in some cases. Let's say a IPO I'm trading a buy at B, and the IPO is above where I should buy it on the close, and it's also following through. Instead of waiting until the close, those extra 20 or 30 minutes, whatever it is, I might go in and get in that setup a little bit early. But in general, I do want to make sure that it's definitely going to trigger by closing on a new closing highs on those buy at Bs. Now, if it's something that doesn't look like I want to get in early, but it looks like it's going to trigger on a buy at B, I'll do a market on close type of order. I'll actually IPO, it probably won't take a market on close order, but I'll go in and actually just punch it in as market order right around the close. 250, obviously there's 10 minutes left in the day. So I get ready for the close. I take a look at anything that I might have put on during the day that needs to come off. I also look for potential race to finish moves. Now, this is another thing I have to be really careful with, but sometimes late in the day, usually within the last 10 minutes, and ideally even closer to the close, maybe within the last 5 minutes, you'll have some ETFs that all of a sudden take off. Occasionally some selected stocks like crypto stocks, or maybe even something like a big fat company like Tesla or whatever. Depends on what I'm watching at the time. But I'll keep an eye on these things, and sometimes futures get squeezed into the close. And sometimes you can go in and make a fairly low risk with a decent reward type of trade. But again, that's another one of those things like the change from open. I have to be really, really careful with and not get too caught up and just chasing some of these stocks. 255, I set any market on close orders where applicable, and then I map out a plan to exit any intraday trend trade. Sometimes I have to exit a few early because I have a lot to get out of. Other times, market on close orders is all that's necessary. So 3 o'clock, market closes at 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, obviously. I want to make sure I have no intraday positions on at this time that I didn't intend on keeping. And that's going to be mostly anything I just put on as a day trade, obviously. And then I formulate an exit plan for the E-minis if applicable. If I do put on E-minis during the day, I'll leave those on past the close, if not stopped out, obviously. And then I'll look to put in an exit plan. 3:05, I begin my nightly analysis. I run a very simple pullback scan that looks for recent 20-day highs, and I have some volume parameters. I like to look for at least a couple 100K on a 30-day average volume. And this pullback scan is really simple, and it produces a lot of stocks because I'm only looking for a recent 20-day high. But I'm able to get a feel for what's going on with the market by doing that. I sort them by historical volatility. So I'm looking at the most volatile stocks first, and not the super volatile stocks and not the stocks that are really low in volatility, but somewhere in between. There's a bit of Goldilocks with the volatility and a little bit more to the high side than the low side, obviously. And that's where my opportunities are likely going to be, if any. And so I flag anything that's trending nicely or mildly interested, and I copy those over to my momentum list. 4 o'clock, I continue my nightly analysis. My momentum list is usually 100 to 200 stocks. I notice what's moving and where. Maybe it's pot, like tonight it's probably going to be crypto. I've been watching semis lately, the banks obviously. And then I'll flag anything that might be worthy of a trade, and I copy those to my Landry list. So we start with the entire stock market universe. We whittle it down to about 2,000 through a simple scan, and then from those 2,000, I go through most of those and copy them over to the momentum list, the ones that I like, and then I call those down further to the Landry list. So at 4:10, I continue my nightly analysis. I call down my Landry list. So let's say I had a stock in my list yesterday and it made a big move today. That'll come off the list, or maybe the stock is no longer set up, or maybe I just don't like the setup anymore. So those will come off the list, and then, of course, the new ones that are on the list, I'll look at those and decide from that list which stocks, if any, that I want to trade. And also, during this time, I'll look at the sectors, commodities, currencies, cryptos, anything that might be relative to the market, including something like bonds. The dollar lately, I've been paying a lot of attention to that. And then I'll update the spreadsheet with entries, protective stops, and initial profit targets, as you often see in my mystery charts. And then I'll update the portfolio performance. About 4:45, I'll record and publish my trading service, and then I'll shut down my office, double check Facebook. I'll look at open positions, make sure there's none that need to be open. I'll take care of some loose ends, and then I'll make sure my trading service got published, and then I'll check emails once again. About 5, I'll leave the office, a little family time. I probably should give my brain more of a rest, but I do take home my tablets and continue to write or rewrite something, that to either rewrite something I did earlier in the day or rewrite something that I've done before, or if I have any new thoughts, I'll write them down. Now, I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to take home a laptop, and then while we watched TV, I worked on a laptop. So I'm getting better. Around 6 or so, continue the family time. We'll cook or something, and we'll have dinner around 7:15 or so. Watch a movie or some sort of series with my wife. I'm not as much into TV as she is, but I do it because she enjoys it. And usually we can find something worthy of watching. We like documentaries and movies based on real life. Anyway, right before around 10 o'clock or so, I'll come back to the office, check in, see if there's any after-hour trading that's happening that I need to know about. For instance, maybe I took home some futures overnight. I want to see where they are or whether or not I got to adjust the order. I'll check on crypto and then maybe take one more last peek at the Facebook group before bed. 10 o'clock, ideally, is bedtime. That doesn't always happen, but that's ideally when I want to get to bed. Ideally, I'd like to sleep more, but, there's a lot of things I'd like to do that aren't happening. Well, that's all my time for this week. I want to thank you, as usual, for watching. Again, if you need follow-up information, DaveLandry.com/StockCharts, and the rest of my contact information is there. Join me weekly for my weekly Dave Landry's Week in Charts at DaveLandry.com/webinar. Again, I want to thank everybody for watching, and may the trend be with you.